James Mendolia. I'm the director of the fashion marketing program at Parsons New School for Design. And my first guest on the side is Dr. Cochis. He's from Miroglio Newlife. Then Giusy Bettoni. She's the co-founder of a company called C.L.A.S.S, which we'll talk about in a minute. Mr. Bizzi, Amanda DeVoe, and Danielle Levine. Danielle is from Yoox.com, and Amanda is from Stylus.com, and they'll also be able to talk a little bit about what they do. So I thought I would start tonight by asking some questions to get the conversation flowing, and then allow half an hour at the end for audience Q&A so that you can engage in conversation with the panelists. So what I wanted to do was take this opportunity to talk about White Milano and the trade show. And this is exciting because it's the first time that White Milano is actually in New York. It's running Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week, and it coincides with the Coterie show. So we'll give Mr. Bizzi an opportunity to talk about that. So the first question that I want to ask the panelists is really, this is the first time White will showcase in New York, and just a little bit about the show and why he thought it was important for White to really penetrate the New York City market.
Good evening. I prefer to speak in Italian language, and Giusy translate for me. Okay. Credo che sia molto importante per noi essere qua a New York per portare una realtà nuova nel campo della moda.
I think it's really important for us to be here in New York, to take here a completely new reality.
White ha rappresentato questo in Italia, a Milano, la voglia, l'idea di dare spazio a progetti nuovi, a talenti nuovi, a designer nuovi.
So as White is doing in Milan, is the concept is to take new ideas, new project, new designer inside.
Credo che in questo momento nel nostro settore ci sia bisogno e anche tanto spazio per progetti nuovi, cose nuove. Il fashion ha bisogno assolutamente di cambiare, e i giovani, la gente chiede, ha voglia di vedere una moda anche diversa. Siamo qui a parlare di ecosostenibilità e questo trovo che sia fondamentale.
So it's the time that fashion has also the space and the need to change, and so it's important to talk about young energy, and also to include the sustainability as a key argument inside of the change.
Nel nostro concetto c'è anche un concetto di ecosostenibilità, nel senso di maggiore chiarezza, vedere una moda un po' più vera rispetto a quella che abbiamo visto negli ultimi 10 anni, dove era troppo, secondo me, basata su degli status symbol. Penso che la nuova generazione sia molto meglio.
So it's a new generation of fashion, the eco-sustainability concept, not just as sustainable, but sustainable because transparent, because true, because of the authenticity that fashion inside of White would like to take.
Quindi siamo qui a New York, abbiamo portato una piccola nostra realtà, una cinquantina di designer. Siamo molto contenti di questo, è un progetto che andrà avanti e speriamo di essere una parte importante durante la moda a New York nel lungo periodo.
So first time in New York, small but really interesting model, 50 exhibitor. First time, but we believe in it, we want to go on, and we hope to get the right space inside of the fashion in New York.
Okay. The one follow-up question I had is, I think at this point in time, we're all witnessing a shift in the commitment of emerging designers and designers in general in regard to including elements of sustainability into their business practice. And the question I have is, what is White Milano, White New York, noticing in regard to the retail buyers' commitment to purchasing and including sustainable?
Ma penso che parlando dell'Europa, che è il mercato che conosco di più, la posizione del retail è ancora un po' ferma, è ancora un po', credo, che ha bisogno di maggiori informazioni, ha bisogno di maggiore apertura. È il momento di farlo, ma non è ancora così pronto a questa cosa.
So, talking about Europe, it is the right moment now, but there is still a big need of information in order to move it. So it's there, it's important. The retailers are not yet so moving toward it, even if, the key thing it was highlighting is the missing information.
Perfect. And then in regard to C.L.A.S., perhaps you can tell the audience exactly what C.L.A.S. does and your affiliation, with White Milano and sort of your work in terms of, helping emerging designers.
So C.L.A.S. is an eco-textile platform that is trying to gather, communicate and promote everything from a material to the finished product that is creative, innovative and responsible. So these are the three elements that has to characterize all the products that are inside of this platform. We are based in Milan, New York, and very soon we are going to announce other kind of partnership in the world. The key thing that we are trying to do is giving information about sustainable material because, maybe some people is astonished, but a lot of the designer and retailer want to do new things, and not poison the world, but it's very difficult for people to identify new materials. Everything is thinking that sustainable material is just about cotton, but there is a word that is high-tech behind it, and we will talk in a moment. And so what we are trying to do is to facilitate not just the information, but we have also physical space where people can come and have information and touch commercial fabrics made of this. This is what C.L.A.S. is about, enabling the market to transform a wish into something concrete and commercial. And one of the key things that C.L.A.S. has done since the beginning, because C.L.A.S. is born in 2007, has been the partnership with White immediately, because we felt really the need to start informing the market about this material. And the best place to be, it was not a fabric fair, but a brand fair. A lot of the designer has never heard about materials at all. So, and now we are growing up and we're here together in New York with a space, with a finished product collection and our textile library.
I actually have a question. For those of you that, well, first I have a statement. For those of you that don't know, Giusy has been a really great friend of Parsons and my students. There have been several times where she's come in on Skype to do a lecture to the class and interact with the students to really teach emerging designers about the different types of raw materials that are out there. But my question is, in regard to emerging designers and the students, one of the things that they always ask me is, they say the obstacle is finding companies, textile mills, that will sell smaller quantities. So I was just wondering if you could speak to maybe some of the obstacles that the designers, maybe a shared experience.
Well, that is one single voice all over the world. It's not just US, but it's Europe, it's Asia. There are a lot of new emerging designers because this will be the designer of the next generation. And for me, these are the most important one. Of course, we need to balance between the commercial positioning of this new fabric and collection, but at the same time, I think it's so great that new emerging designers are starting, elaborating materials that was never existing before. So I've been used to talk about natural fiber, synthetic fiber, artificial fiber. Now we have so many different things. We have recycled material, we have the organics, but we have renewable resources, many things. Of course, one of the key obstacles is that a lot of the producer, does not have the possibility all the time to support the schools, many schools all over the world. So what we are trying to do together with the major schools all over the world is, to be the mentor, let's say, when we can. We are in touch with the most important and innovator in this field, so we try really to facilitate the process.
Excellent. And one of the objectives of this panel is to sort of inform the audience about some of the new raw materials that are out there, or raw materials that the audience might not have heard of. So I thought maybe you can explain a little bit about either Ingeo or Milkofil and sort of what they are and And
well, it's very difficult to summarize so many things in 2 seconds, as you know, James, you know very well. But of course, you know, we have really, and in the last 5 years, things have changed thanks to the technology. We have, you know, we have divided our library in 3 categories. The first one are organic and natural products. The second one is about recycled, and for us, recycle means also completely new technology behind it, because recycle, for example, polyester, it's something that you heard about, but there are really new things coming. And I will leave the word directly to Mr. Cochis, that is the creator of this Newlife story. And then renewable resources. But just to name a few, because it's impossible really to, you know, I will leave Newlife to afterwards. But in the renewable resources material, we have the milk fiber, for example, that sound really funny, but it's really using the waste of milk, so something that the human cannot at all use, and you have to pay in order to waste it. And now they are doing a fiber that is so good to the skin, is really a well-being fiber, and has a fantastic different touch. I keep saying, we were having a conversation 5 minutes ago, you know, fashion is like having a cook with many ingredients. If we can add the new ingredients, in order to, and we get the creativity of the people, you can find really some new levels. What I really highlight here is that eco-sustainability is not just about the natural properties, but it's much more. You know, this is the highest level in technology, and we will hear in a moment also about the recycled polyester. James was mentioning Ingeo, just you know, 2 words about it. Ingeo is coming from a biopolymer. What does it mean? That the polymer, the origin of the polymer is natural because it's coming from natural starch, basically. And it's processed with a very high-end technical patented process by the man. There is a company that is US-based that is called Natureworks. And you can get out of it fantastic fabrics that are coming from a natural origin, but are really high-tech, and you can go from underwear to furnishing as well. And one of the key things is that Ingeo is also used as the new vegetable plastic. This is another really, you know, astonishing thing. So people like Walmart, Danone, you know, and many others has already used it to make, I don't know, you know, the kind of box for the food or the yogurt cup. So something that is going to everyday life. It's not just about, you know, stories.
And just to give you a little bit of a background, I mean, Giusy and I think met somewhere around 5, 6, 7 years ago, and Julia Petit, which is our AAS fashion design construction coordinator, we worked with students when Ingeo was first introduced. And it was interesting because, again, you talk about the obstacles, and because it's made from a starch, it would melt at the slightest bit of heat. But it's now 6, 7 years later, and it has improved in numerous ways.
Yeah.
So it's
still many things to go, of course, because it's really new. Right. But we have solved a lot of the problem.
Thanks. And then to sort of move on to Dr. Cochis, I know that Miroglio has invested millions of euros in terms of research and development. So I wonder if you could share with the audience exactly what Newlife is, what the process is, and in addition to that, if you wouldn't mind, some statistics about the impact on the environment.
Sure. Good evening. Newlife is essentially a platform of sophisticated and technologically advanced polyester yarns derived from the recycling of post-consumer materials, only post-consumer and not post-industrial. Newlife is a lot more than just another range of recycled polyester yarns. I mean, there are a certain number of recycled polyester yarn manufacturers worldwide, but about 4 years ago when we started with this project, we realized that we had to introduce something different. As a company, we make specialty filament yarns and polyester since many years, and we realized that there wasn't a single range of specialty yarns within the recycled environment. And therefore, we started in this process, and we started the difficult way because, first of all, we decided to use only post-consumer material, so essentially plastic bottles. And then we decided to go through the mechanical process of recycling and not chemical process, which is easier to use and then easier to manufacture and spinning. This is important because the mechanical process lends itself to the lowest possible environmental impact of the manufacturing of these yarns, and therefore is truly sustainable, which is what we were looking for since the very beginning. And at the same time, over the years, we developed a very vast range of yarns. And why? Because we realized that we had to offer products that could make beautiful fabrics. Until then, manufacturers and then, of course, consumers had to compromise. You had, if you wanted a range of garments, of fabrics made with recycled material, you had to accept the fact that they were very basic and non-performing. We decided to change this, and within our tradition of making specialty yarns, we started innovating within the range, and today we have a range of products which is virtually the same as we offer in virgin polyester. So this is what Newlife is essentially. What you're mentioning in terms of a few figures, well, if you compare the Newlife yarns, therefore with a mechanical process, compared to standard virgin polyester, you have savings in terms of energy use, in terms of energy consumption, in the range of 75% less. In terms of carbon dioxide emissions, and therefore the greenhouse effect factor, 54% less, and a 60% less consumption of water. And as you know, water is becoming more and more the real issue for the future in terms of sustainability. It is actually coming to the point where the usage of water is becoming more relevant in terms of environmental impact than greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide, essentially. So these are some basic figures. But what is important is that within the range you have innovation. So it's as I said before, we've strived and we've done a lot and invested a lot, as you mentioned, in bringing forward this process so that fashion and therefore designers and creators could have access to a range of products that was diversified and that could make beautiful and performing fabrics.
Are you able to share any new product information that's in development at the moment? Is there anything that's...
Well, sure. I mean, the latest project within Newlife is an attempt to be able to recycle the fabrics that are made from Newlife. So to take Newlife fabrics and bring them back into the system, and therefore make fiber and then yarns out of these fabrics. This is particularly difficult because it is very difficult to do the color stripping of polyester fabrics. It's difficult to do it in an ecological way, so not using harmful chemicals and energy. So we're working heavily on this project with several partners, and we hope to have a presentation made of this new element of the Newlife platform by September in Paris and Premiere Vision.
Excellent. And the other thing maybe, are all of the fabrics, Newlife fabrics, manufactured in Italy, including the plastic bottles? Is it all sort of from the same?
Sure. I mean, this is one of the elements. We built what is called a horizontal supply chain, and therefore all of the Newlife partners, and therefore the whole supply chain is within 50 miles of our main manufacturing site. So it's not only made in Italy, but it's a very local. It's a very local chain, and there again to minimize the impact of the manufacturing on the main environmental stats. Then of course the yarn is used to manufacture fabrics, and these can be made worldwide essentially. But today the main partners of Newlife are still in Italy.
Perfect. I have a question that that perhaps either you or Giusy can answer before we move on. The last few trips that I've taken to PV, Premiere Vision, one of the things that I noticed is that there's usually a separate section for eco-fabrics, and it's this little green path. And in my opinion, I think we've moved away from that. And I was just wondering if maybe there's something that you could share with the audience that sort of deflects that, sort of being I hate to say being green, but I'm going to that, sort of being green as being something that's totally separate than being something that's very fashion forward.
Just back from Premiere Vision 2 days ago, so just fresh. Premiere Vision is trying really to push this new, let's say, fashion and eco at the same time. We know about other experience at other fabric fairs where you have the green part and all the rest. Personally, I'm quite against the fact that you have the sustainability fashion here and the fashion here, because, you know, sustainability is another dimension of fashion. It's nothing, you know, it's an added value, but it's not another word or another market. And this time, really, with Newlife, we have experienced, thanks to Premiere Vision, you know, an experiment. We had an eco innovation library, that's what we call, dedicated to Newlife, and it was really in the middle of the research area, what they call the research area, and we have highlighted everything that was eco, but with a high innovative part, because unfortunately, when you put things in a green part, these become not so interesting for buyers, retailers, because the word eco, bio, ecologic, you know, unfortunately, and for all the historic reason, marketing reason that we know, is not, and I think also the Yoox part, and, you know, it does not create the value, does not create the appeal, does not create the sexy thing that fashion has to have. So also with Premiere Vision, we are experimenting not just a new way to display, but also to communicate about it. And I think it's the time to highlight that design and innovation are the key things of a normal product and should be a normal dimension also for sustainability. And we have to add just responsibility to it.
Perfect. Which is also why I wanted to invite Amanda from Stylus.com and Danielle Levine from Yoox.com to the panel, because again, students, faculty, emerging designers, they're always asking, well, how do I find out about this? Where do I go for information? So maybe we could start with Amanda, and she could tell us a little about Stylus and so on.
Sure. So Stylus is an online business-to-business creative resource. Essentially, we provide validated cross-vertical content over 20 different industries. So our clients range from fashion to home to automotive, architecture, hospitality, electronics, and we really look at stimulating creativity and innovation by looking outside of your immediate world. Stylus was founded in 2010 by Mark Worth, who you may have heard of. He was the W in WGSN. He founded that business in the late 90s, and really his goal with Stylus was to create a resource that addressed the entire creative industry and not just one specific industry. We're all about promoting innovation. And with regards to sustainability, responsibility and sustainability are actually not standalone subjects on Stylus, so very similar to what we were just discussing. It's actually incorporated into all areas of our research, so it's not like at PV with just one section. It's really at the core of our clients' businesses, so it's something that we constantly address, you know, whether it's promoting new materials or new changes in manufacturing, new designers to look up to and what they're doing. That's something that we do on Stylus. One of the things that I found interesting when I was looking at the site is,
so to kind of piggyback onto what you were saying, is you don't treat it separately, and you have architecture with fashion, so it's more about kind of an entire way of thinking as opposed to, you know, looking at it from a microscopic point of view.
Exactly.
All right, excellent. And Danielle, in terms of Yoox, there's some guests in the audience that might not know exactly what you do. Perhaps you can tell us what Yoox is, Yoox.com, and also how you've incorporated that into your online business.
Right. So Yoox.com is one of 3 businesses that make up the Yoox Group, which is an Italian company founded 11 years ago. Yoox.com, as the first business, is one of our bigger ones. It is a multi-brand, multi-category, online-only site. So we sell everything from fashion to jewelry to design, books, kids' clothing, even things for pets. So it's a very unique and interesting site, and what probably characterizes everything on it is that most of the items are sort of interesting and hard to find, etc. the fashion is end of season, all other items are not. And as I said, it's one of Yoox's 3 businesses. We also have a site called The Corner, which you may have heard of, which is actually full-priced and sort of very cutting-edge fashion. And then we also power e-commerce for 30-plus designers, like Armani, Dolce & Gabbana, and others. So in that context, the reason I bring all that up is Yoox.com has an initiative called Yooxogen, which is our sustainable and ethically minded, I'll call it a philosophy. And the reason I call it a philosophy is it's not just, it's not just about running programs or supporting designers who are doing things in a forward-thinking way and in a sustainable way. It's also very much a company philosophy. So all 3 of our businesses, The Corner, all the businesses we help power, all come under a sustainable umbrella. So we do, everything from car sharing and recyclable paper within the company to, we have all sorts of internal initiatives at the company. So I just say that as background because this is not just about, doing something that's fashion forward or press worthy. This is actually something that the company lives day to day.
Perfect. What actually caught my eye on the site was, I know Vivienne Westwood, I don't know all the details, but I know Vivienne Westwood was working on this great project in Africa. Mm-hmm. And I saw part of the site had some info regarding the collection, so I thought maybe you can give a little bit of an overview of what that might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Vivienne Westwood is one of the kinds of, we do several projects. On one side of the spectrum, we'll work with a small designer who will use recyclable materials, et cetera, and give that person a showcase for their goods. On the other end of the spectrum, we'll do something a bit bigger, like support Vivienne Westwood when she did her program last year, where she went to Africa, worked with the Ethical Fashion Africa organization, and the International Trade Center, which is a collaboration between the UN and WTO. And she basically worked in Africa with all these women who made all these bags that were sustainable and ethically made. And to somebody's point earlier, what was very interesting about the program, and as an online retailer, we were able to provide all sorts of information about how the goods were made, showcase, put a video on, et cetera, which I think actually created a sort of 3-dimensional sense to the project that was very helpful. Mm-hmm. And that was a project that got an enormous amount of attention and did well and was good for everyone. And it was very indicative of the kind of thing Yoox likes to do.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, again, that was what sort of caught my attention on the website. It wasn't just about, look, here's a pretty handbag. It was, the story behind it, and then there were video clips that sort of documented the process. I was just wondering, I don't know if you know this, if there was any way to sort of have any feedback from how many hits you got from people looking at the video related to Vivienne Westwood's collection.
Well, I can tell you that that project on the whole for the year last year was one of our most popular projects. And it got picked up by blogs and by writers all over the world, which was very interesting because we do a lot of these things. And there was something about that project, and I think it was the fact that it was very hands-on. She was in Africa. There were a lot of images, a lot of video. And there was an editorial component that people maybe can't get in other retail environments, which I think adds to the sustainability. I think people like to understand where their products are coming from, and I think there was a big sense of that. So to answer your question, every metric we had and the outside interest the project generated all tell us that it was incredibly successful.
Right. And again, it's interesting that you say that because one of our philosophies at Parsons is to make sure we challenge the students to rethink the existing process. And what I find is that I'm starting to see a return to people feeling connected to whatever they're buying. They like to see the story behind the clothing that they're buying, that it's not just a T-shirt or a blouse, that it sort of has a longer life cycle, if you will. So I was just wondering if you wanted to comment on that or anybody on the panel.
No, I mean, I think that's right, and I think particularly in this economy where probably resources are limited and yet our choice of goods is quite, large. I think if people have, and this is a personal view more than anything else, I think if people have the ability, but it's actually one that's also borne out by our business, if people have an ability to, understand where something is coming and also feel good in a way, I think that makes the marginal difference for a purchase, right? Because you can buy, you know, any shirt anywhere, you know, on our site or elsewhere. And I think if you can actually understand the process, and also, you know, they have, you know, a video showing you're actually creating jobs, and that you're, you know, sort of doing things in a way that is ethically conscious. That's, you know, that'll make the purchase decision.
Perfect.
So, and we see that time and time again with all the designers.
And then also I have another question for Mr. Bizzi. Yesterday when I was walking around the show, it was interesting to just, for example, there was one company there, Norwegian Rain, that, you know, they weren't even promoting the fact that they were using sustainable fabrics, but it was just part of their design philosophy. And I wonder, you know, what do you do to sort of qualify someone or a designer that that's in the show as being eco-friendly?
Ieri ha visitato Norwegian Rain, esatto, che ha fatto tutta una serie di impermeabili fatti del poliestere riciclato. Non ne parlava perché per lui è una parte integrante, che è quello che facevamo di solito. Chiedeva cosa fa White per dare qualità, qualificare un range ecosostenibile come quello.
Beh, penso che White è stato il primo salone a fare veramente la parte ecosostenibile insieme a Giusy, quindi al progetto C.L.A.S.S, qualcosa di concreto. La prima volta facendo proprio vedere i materiali, oltre che i prodotti finiti. Quindi quello che si può fare, secondo me, sono tante cose.
So what he's saying is that White has been the first salon in the world to, you know, start a cooperation with materials, with C.L.A.S.S in 2007. And so he thinks that, you know, at the beginning we were just showing materials because we didn't have finished product. But he thinks that there are many things that it's possible to do.
E secondo me una di quelle cose importanti che bisogna fare è proprio trattare questi prodotti nuovi, se vogliamo parlare di nuovi, in modo normale, non in modo diverso dagli altri.
So one of the key things that we need to do is to deal with this new product, new material, in a normal, into brackets way.
Devono entrare nel nostro mondo come migliori e parlare di questo in modo trasversale, ma a un certo punto deve essere messo alla pari degli altri.
So in a certain way, they have to be at the same level of the others, and it needs to be a transversal offer, and they need to be integrated.
Perfect. All right, good deal. Danielle and Mr. Cochis had never met one another, but it was interesting because we were both talking about Olivia Firth. So I thought it would be an interesting question to discuss what the project was, why she came to Newlife, how the fabric was used, and then maybe why Danielle, you know, Yoox.com thought it was important to include in their website.
Well, yes, I think it's important because Livia and Armani selected a series of fabrics made from the Newlife range for certain events, including the Golden Globe Awards, and I think this is important not just because of of the honor, let's say, of having Armani having selected these fabrics, but because it's the definite proof that with this type of range you can make beautiful fabrics, and fabrics that can be used for a variety of applications in textiles, in this case in fashion, and there are diverse. I mean, there were piece-dyed fabrics, there were printed fabrics with different constructions and different finishings, but the underlying principle was the same, in that nobody wanted to compromise on the creativity side and on the fashion side, and they were in a position to select fabrics as if they were made from a normal material and not a recycled material. And I think this was a key element in this choice.
I mean, I would agree with everything that was just said. I do think sort of from a retailer's perspective, I think that whether something is sustainable or ethically made or whatever, I do think you have to keep in mind that it needs to be an attractive product at the end, and that's something sometimes, you know, that gets lost in the fray. The consumer does, even, they may want to feel great, but they want whatever they're buying to look good. But I'd also add another dimension. Something like Livia Firth or Vivienne Westwood, or we did something with Eden last year. All these high-profile projects are interesting and helpful, obviously, because they bring attention to the subjects, the issues. They bring capital to a certain extent. They focus consumers a bit more. And, you know, personally, the whole sustainability subject is an evolution, in my mind at least, where, you know, maybe a designer, we had this conversation earlier as well, you know, a designer may not be 100% eco at the beginning, but, you know, they try something, they succeed, and then the next iteration is better one, right? And so to the extent that a retailer like Yoox can help that process, then I think we're ultimately getting to the right goal.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. I mean, that's been part of my philosophy. I know Giusy's philosophy, which is why we've worked well together, is because, you know, steps in the right direction are steps in the right direction. I mean, if you think, you mentioned the milk yarns. Milk-o-feel has been around since 1923, invented in Italy, sitting on somebody's shelf until someone figured out what they needed to do with it. What's interesting, again, is, you know, whether I show it to designers or students, the first thing the students do is smell it to see if the fabric smells like foul milk. So just from a merchandising marketing perspective, I wonder if maybe, Giusy, you could talk about that, just sort of, you know, what are the obstacles in terms of trying to promote these fabrics?
Well, after 5 years, it's really much better, for sure. You know, at the beginning, it was really difficult. Also because for some reason, you know, when you start talking about sustainability, the kind of expectation is something that has nothing to do with fashion, has nothing to do with something you would like to have for your everyday life. It's something that is good for Christmas or to make you feel better, you know, fair trade and, you know, all this kind of word. And then as soon as you have the possibility really to talk and to communicate in the right way, immediately you have what I call the wow effect. You know, when you show the fabric, you know, I remember when we met with Livia, just to keep the thread, you know, she was really surprised. But, you know, I still remember in December when we met the Armani team that needed to have the right fabric for a fantastic, you know, evening wear garment for the Golden Globes. They will say, I can't believe that these are sustainable fabrics, because for some reason, sustainable fabrics has to be different from all the other. But what we are, you know, trying to communicate, and communication is the key thing. And, you know, I'm really happy to be at the table with two really big giants in this field, because, you know, in the last 10 years, we have seen communication just about the green market, the green world, the green fabric, the green sustainable, you know. But we are talking about garments. We are talking about, you know, fashion or, I don't know, furnishing, depending what you are talking about. And it's not so necessary sometimes to say this garment is coming from recycled bottles. This is a technology behind it. You have to highlight maybe that this garment is the latest innovation and is, you know, has a low profile in terms of, you know, environmental impact. And of course, if you're Gucci, you have to say it in a certain way, because your target, you know, it make people that are buying dreaming about something. If I am Saleva, that I'm doing, you know, garments for climbing or for snowwear, of course the concept is completely different. So the marketing, the communication has changed radically, but you know, people has never to forget that you are talking to the same consumer as before. So if a consumer is buying, first of all, because of the look has to be design driven, you know, and that it's a must for everybody that is doing fashion. Then you need to put an innovation. We have heard from many perspectives, you need a story. Without a story, you are all the same as the others and you do not feel so good. The third part is much more an added value, that is the responsibility, you know. If you find a great garment that has great performance and then, you know, they tell you this is not impacting the environment, I think it is an extra value for you to buy. And we know from market research that, the consumer is ready to buy at 50% more of the price if it is sustainable. What a lot of people forget is that they do not have to sell this garment as a sustainable, but as a beautiful garment.
Exactly.
So nobody will pay 15% more for something that they will not wear in any occasion. So communication marketing is really a key tool.
Oh, perfect. And then Amanda, maybe we can you were talking about some of the fabrics that they were highlighting on the website, and I thought maybe you can just share with the audience what they are and what their magical powers are.
Sure. Some of them actually do seem like they have magical powers. One of them that we reported on actually a while back was catalytic clothing, which is actually, it's nice when I was talking about that multi-industry collaboration. This is actually a collaboration between designers and scientists, and it's actually a technology that suggests that everyday clothes, so everything that you're wearing, can be engineered to possess qualities that purify the air of pollutants. So think of like your jeans literally cleaning the air that you breathe. And this actually works via a simple catalytic reaction on the clothing surface that uses sunshine to break down harmful pollution. And then we can look at how something like this can actually be translated into other areas. What's the bigger commercial impact of this? So we could actually integrate catalytic nanoparticles. Now I'm getting beyond my own personal knowledge, so I'm going to refer to my notes here. But these particles can be put into laundry detergents so that anything you wash can turn into catalytic clothing. And then think of how this can commercialize that idea and gain broader reach across different areas. Other materials that we've talked about, something we've reported on quite a bit, are mycotechnologies, which are fungi-based innovations. So it's low energy, high yield methods, and this can filter water, it can even clean oil spills, it can create new packaging, even building materials. So we actually have pictures on our site of walls built out of fungi, literally living in a mushroom. And then we also, actually Mycobond is an innovative leader in this field, and they're using their fungi foam to package Dell computers. So if you buy a computer in the near future, it may actually come wrapped in fungi. And then we also have reported on Teijin Fibers, which is the world's first closed-looped polyester recycling system. So think of, and this is certainly more your area of expertise than mine, but basically the garment products such as a worn-out garment, are actually recycled by the source that created the raw materials. So exactly what you were talking about before. And it's just an example of getting you to think about the forethought on how a product is going to end its life. We need to really encourage designers and creators to think through every step of what we're doing from the very beginning, from the concept, and that way you can really control the whole cycle.
Perfect, thank you. What I'd like to do is turn the lights up, and as promised, I said that we'd have like question and answers from the audience so they'd be able to participate and ask questions to the panel. So if we can do that. Celia. So Michelle Aline has the microphone. It's on. Right up front. Right here.
No, she's first.
Michelle, right here.
Okay. I was just wondering if you guys could speak a little bit about the costing of the materials and how receptive the end consumer is to maybe a higher price due to the procedures that the materials need to go through to get made.
Before they do that, you want to tell them a little bit about your background? Celia was one of my students, and she has quite an interesting background. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Hi. I have an undergraduate degree in environmental science, and I'm in school here for fashion marketing, and I'm interested in production. I actually went with James to Italy this summer and visited C.L.A.S.S, so I know Giusy. Hi. So yeah, if you guys could speak about that.
Who wants to miss the cookies? Yeah, sure.
Well, if we're talking about Newlife yarns, the difference in terms of cost to, let's say, the virgin product, virgin polyester, on the yarn is about 20%. As you move downstream in the manufacturing cycle, by the time you reach the garment, this will reduce itself to about 3-4% compared to same for same garment made with a virgin material. So the difference is actually very small. But the key element is what Giusy was saying before: is what exactly are you paying for? Of course, there will be a premium. There will always be a premium for a sustainable product, provided it's authentic, of course, which we should take for granted, but is not always the case. But the premium has to come with beauty, performance, and traceability. It's very, very important to point out that consumers today are becoming more and more educated on the products they're buying, and therefore you have to tell a story, but the story has to be real, and it has to come from, there has to be an origin and traceability to all the elements.
So do you think that you'll start off, the idea is to start off in a high fashion market, or is this something that you can bring to?
No, not necessarily. I mean, these, we were talking about Livia Firth before. Obviously, this is a certain level. And it is true that this sort of product tends to facilitate the upgrading of any collection. Mm. But Newlife today is going into a very wide variety of textile applications. It's going into everything except non-wovens. So accessories, luggage, home textiles, basic sportswear. So it's not a luxury element at the origin. Okay, it can become part of a luxury element.
Can I say just one thing, about this luxury and not luxury? Luxury or medium market, these are expression of the brands or the retailer that are going to use the fabric. A fabric can become like in the hand of Armani, something really, fashionable. And the same fabric has been used by other people that are not Armani and are something really functional. Mm. It's really depending from who is going to use it for which application, and also the perception of price. I was just mentioning briefly that for some reason when you talk about eco, the perception is that it's too expensive and it has to cost less than the others. Do not know where these things coming from, but if you position this kind of materials at the right level, so high tech, because we are talking about high tech fiber, nothing more, they cannot cost less, and in the normal dynamic market, price, the new things are normally costing a little bit more, not 50% more, of course, but again, it depends who is the brand that is going to launch it. Because again, Armani, if you buy a Newlife from Armani, is something if you buy Newlife from, I don't know, H&M, whatever, because again, it's a transversal value. It's not just for here or there. You can, have everything. The price is completely different. And the relevance of a yarn, or of a fabric into a finished garment is really, really low. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also the responsibility of the brand to figure out where do we need to sort of step back from being very greedy. I hate to say it. Sorry for anybody that's out there. But, where you need to sort of step back and say, we need to do something that's responsible and we need to take this seriously and make it part of our culture, our brand's DNA, rather than sort of nickel and diming, if you will. Yeah. Very good. I think Tamara had a question.
Well, my first question was already asked, but it's working, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But I have a follow-up question. You addressed that during the presentation, but I'd like you, if you can come back to how do you make the new designer or the emerging designers to be able to use these wonderful fabrics that you are creating? I understand that the research raises a little bit the cost. That's normal, but the young designers maybe have a different budget than Armani or Vivienne Westwood. So is it? I think that there are ways to address.
This. The first thing that I would like to say is that the new designer know better this material than big designers, first of all.
Right.
Because the school is already, informing them about this new material, something that the normal market is getting step by step now. The problem is not the price of the material, but the fact that some of these material are produced by company and they have minimum, you know, in order to
That's
produce
what I'm
things.
talking about,
What
the
we
quantity.
can do, I tell you for what we are doing, as we are a platform, what we try to do is to concentrate this little designer and try to have the minimum of weaver and try to fulfill the needs. Of course, there is not a lot of choice, but it's better something than nothing, you know. The good thing is that in Europe, you still have European companies and Italian companies with low minimums, and many times they have stuff and they can get it. So it's not 100% perfect, but in our case, at least the 80% of the young designers that are asking fabric, they get it from all over the world, and not just from Italy. So that's not perfect. We are a small platform. We are a private company as well. We are not a foundation, or we wanted to be free, really, to do these kind of things. So what we are trying to do, and that's why we are here, we have really partners like, you know, James and Parsons, is really to inform these people that we exist, at least. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
Mr. Cochis, Luigi Leonardi, Parsons part-time faculty. One of my questions was being familiar with Miroglio. I understand that obviously this is coming from the textile department, but is Miroglio also having several manufacturing divisions? Are they using most of the Newlife material in their manufacturing of the finished goods, or they're not necessarily using that fabric as their main element?
No, Miroglio is starting, and I mean, Miroglio has a specific range of fabrics in the printed fabrics division, and as you may know of Miroglio, every division is fully independent. So the fabrics division is one of, let's say, the partners of Newlife for printed fabrics. And then, of course, as I said before, Newlife is going into many other different areas. The project that we're working now on with Miroglio is to introduce this not just in terms of fabrics which they sell to the market, but in their own stores. As you know, Miroglio has different brands as a retailer. So now we are one of the new things that, as James was mentioning before, the new things we're working on is precisely this.
So basically the Miroglio collections, the finished goods collections, have a sort of a first choice on the fabrics that come from the Newlife yarn?
No, not at all. In fact, in that sense, the yarn division, Filature Miroglio, which I represent, is of all the divisions the one which is more independent. And this was very clear since the very beginning. In fact, as normally happens in families, Miroglio was one of the last to start, but simply because at the beginning we were engaged more on the functional aspects and say on we attracted a different range of customers, and then Miroglio came as well. But they are treated as a fabric manufacturer as any of our partners. There is absolutely no discrimination. It wouldn't be able to work otherwise. I mean, we would have no visibility on the market if this were the case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, yeah, right here. Hi, I also have a science background.
Can you stand up?
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much.
So I also have a science background. So when you talk about these new and exciting fabrics and these new different, you know, like the jeans you were talking about, the first thing that comes to my mind is, have these things been, you know, tested in real time? Are there regulations? Are there different kinds of, like, what are the long-term effects of these fabrics? How are they going to react with our bodies? Are they safe for us or the environment? I understand they're sustainable, but have they been tested in that sense?
So,
I can talk for the C.L.A.S.S fabrics. The criteria for the fabric producer to be part of C.L.A.S.S are three. The first one, they have to be looking good because the kind of application is fashion and the furnishing. The second criteria is the technical fact sheets. So C.L.A.S.S cannot be a controller about all the characteristics you were mentioning, but the fabric producer has, you know, the kind of duty to do it. So we ask them the technical specification in order to see if they are performing, easy care, easy wear, everything that the law is imposing them. The third characteristic is the certification about the sustainability. You know, everybody can speak about I'm sustainable, I'm responsible, but you need a sort of certification to do it. And we have 3 different kind of certification. For the organic materials, we have, generally speaking, the GOTS, that is the reference point for us. There are many others. You know, I do not want to go into the details, but GOTS is universally recognized, generally speaking, for the organics. For the recycled material, we have the GRS from Textile Exchange, and there is also something linked to GOTS in ICEA that we have in Italy, but it's a European one. And then for the materials that are coming from renewable resources, the only thing that is working is the LCA, the life cycle assessment, so that we can have, but again, a lot of confusion because it seems that all the certification has to be the same, but depends on the material you're talking about.
Right. And to sort of further answer your question, just so we're clear, is, you know, in many cases with the textile mills, you're talking about huge teams of scientists behind the creators of the fabrics. And especially in the EU, there are companies, organizations that will certify some of the fabrics before they can, you know, sort of stake their claim, if you will. But a lot of this is backed by science, and it is really sort of at a point where you know, we're at a growing point, if you will. You know, I hate to say this, but I will. The United States is way behind what a lot of other countries are doing in terms of certification and research and development. It's only really in the last, I'd say, 5 years where I'm starting to see, and I'm proud of it, I'm starting to see huge efforts by companies ranging from budget to bridge to designer, where in the US where they really are sort of putting their money where their mouth is, if you will. Thanks. Any other questions? Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So I'll join the chemistry bandwagon. I was also a chemistry major undergrad, and now I'm a creative director of brands and a magazine publisher here in the city. So when you talk about the communication aspect and the storytelling of what it is that you're doing, it's really interesting to me, particularly because I think the market is really ready for what's happening right now. I think the only thing that kind of usurps this story is the story of the economy, and even still the sustainability aspect is really important. If you look at brands like Club Monaco, they did their whole Made in America campaign. Zara has done the same. So I wonder if when you do something so interesting as partner with Giorgio Armani or something like that, is there any thinking that you're going to develop Newlife further as a brand, develop C.L.A.S.S further as a brand? So in the future, maybe it's when you read blogs, it's Giorgio Armani times Newlife to provide you this thing, or Newlife times Alexander Wang gives you these great T-shirts for this summer. So branding in that way?
Well, it's already happening.
Okay.
Because you know, one of the key things that has been discussed here is also the authenticity. And the only way to be authentic and to be certified into bracket is to give an identity card also to your fabric. So it's important not to say a sustainable fabric, but Newlife stands for this technical specification and this sustainable specification. If you want to use, I don't know, the organic wool by Zignone, you will have, together with the fabric, you will have all the certification in order to tell you what the story is. So there will be also a label, sometime about a trade brand, like in the case of Newlife, or of a story, depending on the strategy of the people. But it's really important, and we are facing, I think, a new ingredient branding approach here, because till yesterday, the material, you know, thinking about Lycra, I'm using it just because it's well-known worldwide, really consumer level. You know, Lycra stands for, is really the best elastic in the world, you know, for different performance. Now we are seeing the developing of new brands that stands not just for a performance, but also for sustainability. And the performance is fine for the consumer, but I think sustainable is much more. And if you can give both, you have the perfect, I think, you know, case history to have an advanced, a value, an added value to sell. And this is not just about communication, it's communication supporting the business, and something so good for the consumer. So that is the new level of marketing and communication, going through the ingredient branding.
And I think you have to, you know, respect companies like even Timberland, where they've taken, and Patagonia, where they've taken strides, and it's very risky at this point, as you said, with the economy, or even when there's a good economy, to take a standpoint and say, this is our philosophy, this is what we believe in, and we're not budging. So I really have a lot of respect for those companies, because they don't back down to any sort of pressure, and what they've in fact done has set a standard for the rest of us. And now, I think in one of the classes, a student brought in an article several semesters back, and it was talking about Walmart partnering with Patagonia to create a new business philosophy. So what you said at the beginning is really interesting. The fact that we're at a critical point in our history where, again, I've said this 1,000 times because I've heard it 1,000 times, is the consumers know they need to do something, they just don't know what it is they need to do, number one. And from the design and merchandising perspective, do we even really need to bombard them with that information, or do we just do it from our point of view, and then the cycle just sort of happens and has a very positive impact? So I would love to believe that 5 years from now, looking back at sort of what we did here or other things that we've sort of partnered in, it's almost silly in the sense that everybody does it, so what's new about it? So, and that's part of anything that's in its infancy. And again, it goes back to 5 years ago when Julia Petit and I tried to do projects within JO, and when we were first trying to use it, the fabric was melting because it was a cornstarch. And it's much different now, but because we were doing it with a very specific mission, we wouldn't give up.
In which way, as a consumer, I can recognize at the first glance that that particular down jacket or that particular bag is being made with this kind of fabrics? There is any international logo, I hate the logo word or brand, but there is anything that I can recognize immediately that that particular style is being made with these materials?
Do you want to, Mr. Cochis, maybe could answer for Newlife? Is there a logo that people are starting to recognize?
I think he was talking more about a broader way to recognize a sustainable garment, right?
Correct.
So, given the fact that we are at the beginning of the process, I would like to say yes, but at the moment is a no, of course. But things are going step by step. What you can find today from the last 3 years onward, and Newlife is part of it, and the milk fiber, many other things. We were just talking about, doing the ingredient branding. So there will be more and more an identity card on the garments about the brands and the retailers that are going to use them that will say this is Newlife. So Newlife will stand for these technical characteristic and sustainable characteristic. So it's not the ideal situation with a general global logo to do the sustainability part. But if you look at the difficulties that we have just with the certification of the yarn and the fabric and the different laws around the world, even in Europe there are, I don't know how many states, but each one of them has a completely different approach. I think it's worthwhile, and I really thank these weavers, knitters, spinners that are still investing a huge amount of money in order not just to give a technical performance to the garment, but also a sustainable message as well, clear, authentic. So maybe just relating to one fiber only or one yarn, but at least is better than nothing as we see at the moment, because if you look now into magazine or next to the garment, it's just generally eco-friendly. What does it mean? So at least they know if it's a Newlife or it's, I don't know, the Crabion brand, you know where it's coming from, which is the process, and you can go on the website and check all the certification. So it's not ideal, but it's the next step.
And then to sort of tackle that situation, you also have a bigger problem when you have mega brands. They don't necessarily want another hang tag on their garment. So, that's another sort of dilemma that sort of comes up. But thank you.
Corporate communication.
More questions? Tamara.
It's more a comment, because you brought up the certification, and I know that this is a problem. It's not only in Europe, it's everywhere. Everywhere. Are you working with Blue Sign, any of you? Yeah. Yes. They are also partnering with Patagonia. And what they do, it's really looking at the whole process, and it's if we will get 2 or 3 certificates that we can trust, this is what you're talking about. I think we will be in a very good shape. But the problem is that at this point, although it's growing, we are still a long way to go. But certification, this is, and I kind of disagree with you on the new tag. I think people do want to know where it's coming from, who initiated that process, and a tag that will assure us that it's really sustainable could really help the consumer.
Right. The problem where that becomes a little bit sort of problematic, if you will, is that if you think about most clothing now, you have the fabric from one country, you could have cut and sew in another area, you could have assembly in another area. So really trying to find one label that goes across 6 or 7 different countries is difficult. And again, think about sort of the huge number of countries out there where the U.S. is doing manufacturing becomes more complicated than doing local manufacturing. So yes, it can be, but you know there are issues that would get in the way of sourcing.
One thing that we also address on Stylus is the challenges with actually defining sustainability. Correct. Because there's organic, there's fair trade, and that doesn't necessarily mean sustainable. So again, that's going to come into play with branding this and creating a tag that sort of covers everything. One thing that we happen to look at a lot is resilient science, which is more about growth, and it's more of a long-term solution as opposed to sustaining something. So that's just different ways that Stylus would help you look at it. But again, there's a big challenge in defining sustainability.
And again, if you think of what Amanda's talking about now, this is all brand new. I mean, forecasting services have been around for a long time. I don't remember this type of information being around 15, 20 years ago. So even though we might feel like it's a slow process, it is moving in a direction, if you will.
And a lot of it's coming from students. We actually find that a lot of the innovations in materials, uses of byproducts, are coming from students and young designers. I mean, they're really at the forefront. They are igniting this in the industry, and they're going to be the ones to change it for the industry. We've looked at, we were covering at the Royal College of Art, a designer who created a juicer made out of orange peels, taking the byproducts from orange, from peeling your orange, and literally creating a product out of it. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that too.
Mm-hmm. I'd actually love to hear from some students, some more students, like their feedback. George, any questions?
I'm also, I'll join the group here. I'm also studying environmental studies here and fashion design at the same time. So I'm in my thesis work now, which is looking at the use of clothing and how can we start to change our sort of methods of actually washing, drying, dry cleaning, and looking at sustainability from that angle. So yeah, it's just interesting to, like you were saying, to define the word sustainability because there's so many different ways. So it's interesting to see people like you because it's kind of where I'm going to be looking for when I graduate in a few months.
So I have a question actually I'm going to throw back at you, which I think would be kind of interesting, is what steps are you doing that are altering the way a designer would work? Is there something new and different, or a different approach that you have?
I think Giusy kind of touched on this, that it's not about marketing ourselves as sustainable designers. That is kind of just getting embedded as our ethos of design, and we're just going forward to produce garments in that manner. So that it's not, I'm interning with a company right now where that's kind of our philosophy, where everything that we're doing, from the way we ship out the garments in biodegradable poly bags to a suit that I'm actually helping them to create now that we're going to market as you don't really need to wash it so much, And that's just going to come from the care label that we're going to make. So it's not saying that this is a sustainable garment, but the effect of taking care of this suit is going to be a sustainable habit.
Perfect. Great. Thanks. Any other questions? I want to, make sure I respect the time. We're almost, at the 7:30 mark. So I'll take some last questions. If not, how about if we all thank our panel? And thank you for all coming, and make sure you check for future Rethinking Fashion series. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank